Welcome to another edition of HDPR Live. We had some technical difficulties, but we've got backup systems, so we are good to go. Today, we have Matt joining us. Matt, welcome to HDPR Live.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, Matt, you're the director of the commercial vehicle business development. That's the title of your position at a company called Decisiv. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's right.
All right. I love the big, long titles. Now, we had a chance to talk offline, and we were discussing the industry. We were talking about some opportunities to do business together. And you said something that piqued my interest. You said that if the technology that your company is developing today, if that was available in the past, you never would have sold your family's mobile repair business. Can you tell me a little bit more about why that is?
Absolutely. The thing is, there's only two jobs in this industry that are really hard. One is turning a wrench and one is driving a truck. And for a very long time, the focus has been on very siloed products that didn't find ways to, integrate with your customers and build value. And so what I've seen from Decisiv, and what I really meant to get to was, how can you eliminate friction in buying maintenance? The maintenance supply chain is something that every single carrier has to deal with. But when you're in a business where you're trying to find ways to reduce costs for your customers, the ability to integrate with their systems, whether it's using some sort of API infrastructure or whether it's using some sort of standard repair times to guide the maintenance spend, if you can control that, you have the ability to add value to your customers. And what I'm seeing in this industry, diesel laptops first among them, as well as companies like Fullbay that are focusing on making technicians more productive, driving more business to facilities. If you can do that, if you can have a mechanic turning a wrench more than doing administrative work, you are building value for your customers. So what I'm seeing today is technology is focusing on solving problems that have always been around, but using new solutions to do it. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is when you're a small independent shop, my company had about 80 mechanics and we were in 6 different states. We don't have an innovation budget. We don't have the ability to try to find new solutions. We basically bought the only stuff that we had to buy. Parts, we had the different benefits for the employees and the training stuff. And now what we're seeing in the industry is it's getting easier. And that's really, really, really encouraging.
When you talk about that, what comes to mind for me is I think about throughput through a shop, and I think about the same kind of issues on the part side of the business, right? It's like, if we can develop technology that allows the person who is working on that truck to stay focused on diagnosing and just be able to press a button and have the parts show up, like, that's the big dream. If we can get to that point, we put that power into the hands of the independent repair shops. It helps them when they're trying to compete against other, like, for example, a dealer who has 13 bays and they have the full support of a truck OE behind them. Those mechanics and those repair people that work at those dealerships, they have so many resources available to them, but the independents, they're lacking that resource. So when we're talking about managing communication, can you go into a little bit deeper of what exactly we mean by managing communication?
When you look at the maintenance supply chain and you look at a service event, when that starts off, usually it's a driver making a phone call to either a dispatcher or to a call center. And then that call center reaches out to a vendor, and the vendor wants to go out and do some service. And then they get to the site, and whether they have the right parts or they have the right diagnostic equipment, you don't know until you get there. That is the way that the aftermarket has been for many years. But communication is more than just a person talking to another person. These assets are talking. They're sending out telematics. They're sending out engine codes. They're sending out failures. These are all different types of communication that can be consolidated, can be actionable. So that when you're like, when a truck shows up at my old shop, I have a mechanic who goes with a paperwork order, writes down the VIN number, goes back into the system, loads that VIN number in, says, oh, here's the asset. Let's start doing this whole diagnostics tree. All of those things can be managed in a much simpler, unified platform. If you can manage communication, you will manage the customer's experience. So in our system, what Decisiv does, for example, is we have the platform where the OEs and their representative, call centers can talk with the dealer groups, so the service providers can talk to the fleets. So everyone can know exactly at the same time, this truck is down. Who needs to get involved to get it up again? And how soon is it going to be up? What are the ETAs for the parts, for the different elements of this whole business? It's not just having a mechanic turn a wrench. It is having a service event that is orchestrated and made possible to eliminate the friction that's already in the maintenance business. There's so much work that gets outsourced by the fleets. And if you have the ability to give them visibility in real time, that is valuable. That is what communication's about. So that is what this nature is, that there's now machines that are telling us they need service. And we need to have people who are ready to service those assets when they're down.
Yeah, I work with diesel laptops. You've already mentioned them. Their big dream is to be able to use the emerging technology to communicate with a truck that is broken down. And they want to give the repair people the tools to be able to communicate with that truck on the side of the road from their shop. So, right. So one of their trucks that they're responsible for repairing has broken down. They want to be able to communicate with that truck, run the fault code. And by the time that truck is towed into the shop, the parts needed to repair are sitting on the bench beside the mechanic waiting to go. The truck is fixed, it's pushed through the shop and back into service. And with the emerging technology of communication with trucks, with big data, with 5G coming, this is all possible in the next year or two.
Yeah.
And when I think of an independent repair shop, and I think about them trying to compete in that world, if they don't partner with strong partners to give them those tools, they're going to start to fall behind. As it is, it can be difficult to do business with the larger fleets and to make inroads if you don't have some of this stuff already in place.
Absolutely. The thing is that the problems that we have in the industry are not new problems. These have been around for 30 years. How do you solve parts availability? The right part at the right time has to understand, do you already have it in stock? If it's a different part number, how do you know that? What I go back to is it is so hard to buy parts. The way that I bought parts, when I have representatives come in and say, here's the manufacturer I represent, I'm happy to sell you these things. Like, is it the same brake drum as it is on that one? And that's not acceptable. The data exists to make buying parts easier. As an aftermarket provider, I don't add value to parts. I install parts. I add value with labor. The fleet didn't want to have the mechanic to do that. That's what I supplied. If I can get parts more consistently, more affordably, that's a value I pass back on to the fleet. Our goal in the aftermarket has always been, how can I reduce my customers' costs? How can I control the cost? And technology is there that you can do that. It's fantastic. So if I had a shop today, I know the kind of technology that I'd be investing in. Absolutely.
Right. And I had a conversation with someone recently where we talked about, like, for example, just the emerging e-commerce platforms, where right now, because I think of COVID, a bunch of companies were probably already working on it, but maybe they accelerated it, or maybe the timing was just coincidental, but we've just seen launch after launch after launch of e-commerce sites. The problem I see is that they're replicating what they did in the offline world digitally.
Yep.
Replication is not the solution here. Reimagination of how we can take a truck from that situation of where it needs a repair through to being repaired and out the door and back into service. We need to reimagine how we can do that. And by adopting these new forms of technology, that's just one component of reimagining that. So anyone listening, if you're in that position where you have to try to guide your company, whether you're at the repair level, the parts level, the fleet level, how can you reimagine how this can be done? Because that's where we'll make a big step forward as an industry.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the challenges, so before I worked at Decisiv, I was with Dickinson Fleet Services, and they had purchased my company that we had started back in the early 90s. And we had over 500 mobile service trucks, but I didn't have any parts vendors that wanted to deliver them. We had tens of millions of dollars we spent annually on parts, and there was not an infrastructure to support the changing consumer buying habits. So as companies are trying to adjust to the new normal, your point is exactly right. This is not changing the dynamic. It's accelerating the trend of buying things differently. One of the challenges I had when I was with my dad's company was we were a dealer for Tyco Pro Spotters. And I was one of the first vendors to list all the parts on Amazon. I worked with Amazon in Seattle, and I was like, this is exciting. I'm going to have stuff on Amazon. The problem I ran into was, at that time, no one's buying parts on Amazon. The people behind the parts kind of like, I call this guy and he gives me these things. I call this guy and he gives me these things. So when I had done this, I was like, this is not going to work. But now our generation is in the parts buying business, and they don't want to buy parts by making phone calls. The reality is, if you have to talk to a human being to sell something, you're just not going to sell it. Like my generation, our generation is, we want to click it, not talk to anybody, and have the right thing. If you can promise and deliver the right thing at the right time for the right price, you're going to win the business. That's just the nature of it. So as an aftermarket, you want to be brand loyal as best you can, but you want to be customer loyal, because your business is all about how you deliver value to that customer every single day. You stop delivering value, they're going to go somewhere else. With an aftermarket, if you don't have a dealer group that's sponsoring you and assets coming in, you have to beg, borrow, steal, and fight for every single trailer or truck that comes into your bay. Every single one, every single time.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about trends. I want to really get into, why is mobile repair one of the fastest growing sectors in the whole repair infrastructure in North America?
I've been doing mobile trailer. My company's been doing mobile trailer for 20 years. That's where we got our business started. So, you know, what you learn is when consumer buying habits change, the way that you source the equipment changes. And if you change the expectation to make a more convenient solution. So for years, they were talking about, well, their downtime is just so long. Shops are taking too long to do things. I don't want to have non-billable miles for my driver taking an asset to get serviced. Or if you're an independent shop, you have a CDL driver and you're going to send that guy to go pick up an asset and bring it back. Mobile brings convenience to you, a dedicated mechanic. The reality is, I look at it as like Blockbuster and Netflix. When Netflix decided we're going to send DVDs to people's home, Blockbuster's like, we don't care. We have assortment. We have selection. We have a whole experience coming to the store. No one realized that no one wants to go anywhere. If you can bring the service to your house, there is going to be a monumental savings of time. Just to looking at your own vehicle, if you take that to get an oil change, you're usually going to wait till it's past due. You're going to go there and wait for a half an hour to an hour and to get it done. And then you're going to be like, okay, well, that's all completed. If you could buy 2 hours more time of your life, you do it. So mobile is the trend that is less than 1% of maintenance is done with a mobile truck today. But you look at the players that are in this space, people like Your Mechanic or Wrench or Dickinson or TA, everyone realizes that the business is going to be moving to mobile. And if you have that mobile solution to give that customer the ability to buy it now and have it on site, you're going to win. You have no choice. That is where the market's going to go.
Yeah. You know, I've said, like, my expertise is on the parts side, and I have said for a long time now that the first person who develops a solid way of identifying the part needed and a one-click buy and have it delivered 2 hours later if you're in an urban center, or next day if you're in a rural, the minute that you get to that level, the entire infrastructure of the traditional distribution channel will collapse.
Well, this is what I love about that, because there's 3 things we have to solve in maintenance. That is going to be the labor rate, the SRT, the standard repair times, and the parts. All of those things are knowable now.
Yeah.
All of those can be found now. So if you can connect them, you don't just change maintenance, you change the transportation industry. You look at fleets that spend incredible amounts of money on maintenance, but it's done with thousands of suppliers across vast geographic regions. These are barriers that don't really matter as much anymore. With the multinational suppliers, the ability to understand all sorts of different pieces of this business, this is when that happens. It's going to be awesome. And that is what I'm working with. I see companies that are going in that direction. It will be there, and we have to be ready for it. If you're not, you're just not going to be in business anymore.
Yeah, that's just the cold hard truth about it, right? It's all about the user experience. It's all about creating value. We throw around that expression, creating value, way too much. Most people and most businesses don't actually create a differentiated value. They really don't.
Yeah.
When I was in aftermarket parts, we were all interchangeable as salespeople and parts people. And we used to, like, get on the merry-go-round. It would spin a couple of times. Everybody would get off and be at different companies, right?
Yeah.
Because people were constantly moving from one company. Why? Because every company is offering the same thing, right? Knowledgeable people on the parts counter, a wide range of products delivered quickly at a competitive price.
Yeah.
And it's like, and not only that, we're all selling exactly the same products from the same manufacturers. No differentiation at all. All those things were touted as this is what makes us different, but in reality was the entry to the game of being in parts.
You're exactly right. I mean, we go back and say that there might be a fundamental difference. Some people will say, like, from a fleet mechanic to a aftermarket mechanic to a dealer mechanic. I'll tell you, they're all the same. They're the same people. They go from back and forth. A guy who starts his career in a fleet or starts his career in a dealership will move around. The quality of the mechanic is not based on who they're doing the repair and maintenance to. We have, if it's not maybe 20,000 shortfall in mechanics. I remember for every one mechanic looking for a job, you have 100 positions open. So to the point of differentiation, we have to change the way you do business. And that is by consolidating the types of information we have to deliver controllable, consistent pricing. There's no reason that it's as hard as it is. And that's why I go back to my first thing is it sucks to be a mechanic. It is hard work. It is hard to be a driver. We kind of forget, like, with the different companies that are involved, whether it's a multinational or an owner operator, these are people that have a very hard job to do that we don't have enough resources to make it easy for them to do that job. It's getting better, which is great.
And when you think about that, I mean, this is why I think we've been trending down on bringing new people into the industry, because like I know myself, if I was, let's say, 20 years old right now, contemplating where I'm going to go with my career, and I have a choice between working in, something related to digital technology, or I could be a mechanic slogging through mud, laying down in ditches on the sides of the road, grease all the time. Like, it's a special kind of person that says, that's what I want to do for a living. Most people are like, even when they just begin to try it, are like, this sucks. There's better jobs than this. I'm going somewhere else. So we've got the regular competition with all the other sectors and industries, just because there's lots of options for people. But then we have this suck factor that has to be overcome. So if you're an independent repair shop owner, what are you up against if you're going to try to move your business forward?
So the first thing I would say is we talked about before, mobile. If you don't have a mobile solution for your customers, you have to have one. Whether or not every customer you have wants mobile, there will be a select group of customers that have no option. They want it to be done mobile. They want it to be done in a more convenient way. And when we talk about value, value is also a way to say margin. When you provide a service that is different than something else and you're good at it, that is a way you drive real margin growth. So for the independent shops, you have to lean into technology. If you're chasing labor rate as the only way you sell your business, you're doing a disservice to yourself and to your customers. We look at the total cost of maintenance. What is the administrative cost to bill something out correctly and to have that sent to a customer? What does a customer do with that invoice? Do they rekey it? Do they have to do some additional general ledger accounting or entering VMRS coding? You have to be on top of the cutting edge and you have to pay attention to where the trends are going. Consumer buying habits are going to continue to change. And if you understand how people buy things, how they consume things, that is where you have to anticipate they're going to go for buying what is really hard. I mean, maintenance buying on a procurement side is incredibly challenging. And that level of sophistication is why procurement departments to this day don't really get involved really heavily on maintenance buying. There's maintenance departments, which are just maintenance procurement shops, but it's understanding how technical this industry is. Just to build off of your last point I wanted to mention, though, is we spent 20 years telling people if you're a driver or you're a mechanic, you failed, and that's unacceptable. This is a job. When I started off with my dad's business, I would have people with their brothers working with us, and then their kids would come work for us. This was a trade. It's not looked at that anymore. If you're a diesel mechanic, you can make a good living. You can have starting off at 25 bucks an hour. I know of fleets that are paying $48 an hour for a mechanic. This is a great way to really invest in the future. Because to the other point of the way technology is changing, diesel may not be the main source of powertrains in the next 10, 20 years. So the types of mechanics we're going to be looking for are engineers, programmers. That's the kind of people we want. So whenever I can talk about how awesome this industry is, I talk about it because we touch everything. Every single thing that people have in their house, it came on a truck, whether it came from the intermodal containers from far off seas or coming here with distribution or retail. Everything is transportation. We are the way you know when the market's doing well and when market's doing poorly. We're the first to fall and the first to recover. We are really, really important. And then the more we talk about transportation, we should be proud of this. This is awesome. This is an awesome thing to be able to do.
Oh, I echo that sentiment, because I have been treated very well by this industry. I love this industry. I love the people in it, the salt of the earth kind of people, the backbone of our society. Len Prince sent me over a shirt that says, I think if you're wearing it, eating it, or living in it, it came in a truck. Like, our whole world is built on the logistics of the infrastructure. That is largely, other than seeing the trucks go down the highway, most people just are blind to
Absolutely.
how important and integral this industry is to keeping our society operating at the level it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more. It's just when you people understand what it is that we do and why we do it. And no one leaves this industry. I mean, I'm sure you've been in the industry for like, no one does. No one. Oh, I can't stand it. No, you don't. You love this. My dad was an old roadway guy. Then he went to Airborne, and then he started a company working on what was RPS that became FedEx Ground. You don't leave it. You don't get out of it. This is the coolest industry there is. It's amazing.
Well, I left at 09 and I got pulled back in 2016, right? And I'm happy to be here. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, Matt, let's have some fun. I'm going to set a reminder in Asana to trigger a follow-up 5 years from now, because we're going to predict the future. And 5 years from now, you and I are going to listen back to this, and we're going to see how right we were. So let's predict what's going to happen in the next 5 years for the repair industry. And then I'll talk about what I think is going to happen with the parts, and we'll marry the two together into kind of a vision of where we think this industry is going. And then, not that we won't talk for 5 years, but in 5 years, I'll send you an email and be like, hey, let's watch back or listen back to this video and see what we said and how right or wrong we were. So
absolutely.
Go ahead.
What I see in 5 years is an increased drive for communication, autonomous vehicles, the increase of mobile. I think that if you see 1% of mobile being done today, I expect to see between 20 and 30% being mobile, whether that's at the quick lube stuff like Jiffy Lubes and Pep Boys, up into doing brake jobs on trailers. The business that I ran was having mechanics with trucks stationed at customer locations every single day. And that was a way that they could help reduce their costs and control their costs, because transportation companies are not maintenance companies. That is ancillary to their business. We are going to continue to see the trend of hyper focus on your core competency. If you're not a maintenance company, you are going to outsource more maintenance. If you are going to be a maintenance company, it's going to be either a consolidation of massive firms or independents that have the ability to act with the same types of technology as the larger competitors. So in my mind, I keep seeing the focus of massive organizations doing maintenance, and then a bunch of very competitive, smaller and regional players, following the trend of more autonomous vehicles, more electric vehicles, more communication, and more synchronization of every single person in the maintenance supply chain. That's the kind of way I envision in the next 5 years.
And for me, on the parts side, I see a fully integrated system from fault code all the way through to parts procurement, all done on one platform, where people will be able to, in essence, hit that, they'll run the fault code, they'll be able to say, buy now. That part is going to be delivered within a couple hours if you're in a major center. But I also see on the manufacturing of parts sides, we're going to see the fall of some companies who don't respond fast enough. I also think we're going to see one of the major parts distribution companies collapse. And I think that we're going to see manufacturing switch from a very large scale mass volume to independent manufacturers doing really niche manufacturing.
Yeah.
Because I think that you're still going to have the big manufacturers, you're going to have to, but I think it's going to become more closely connected with the actual truck OEs because of electric vehicles, because of autonomous vehicles. You're just not going to see so much of the parts manufacturing being done out of house and brought in by independents. You're going to see a lot of that just come in-house. We just handle everything from start to finish. And you're going to see independents who are going to say, okay, we used to supply 70% of our parts to the OE. That's now fallen to 20%. and we need to do something different. So you're going to see all these niches, or niches if you're in the States. I'm in Canada, so I say niche. But you're going to see all these people get really, really focused on something highly technical that isn't going to be easily just replicated by the use of machine learning algorithms and robotics. And so the whole industry, I think, is going to start to shift. And I think the power is going to be put in the hands of the users, the people who either buy the part and install it, or the people who have to buy it and install it for one of their customers, or like a fleet who's going to buy it and install it themselves. And that whole shift in putting the power in the hands of the users is going to be very good for the industry. But I think it's really scary for a lot of the parts distribution companies, because it literally removes them from the relevant distribution channel. And if they don't reinvent themselves, if they don't reimagine how they can participate in that distribution, we're going to see a couple of them go the way of the blockbuster. I really think that's going to happen.
I couldn't agree more. And what I like about your vision for being able to buy it now for a part, I'd go one step further. Buy it now, and then another button, install it now. That is the nature of what we're going to have, is the ability to say, where do I have mechanical capacity today? And the ability to workflow things, because we see this massive interesting trend with Uber and Convoy and brokering freight, and saying we can have more people participate in this marketplace. Maintenance is no different. When you look at the SRTs, whether it's Mitchell or Motors or some consolidation of other SRTs, the things that are needing to be known are knowable. The parts that are needed to be installed are knowable. The people who need the service done is knowable. The people willing to do the service for a price is knowable. And as those things kind of connect, and that more of a partnership mentality between people who have expertise, that's going to make maintenance easier. And if it means the mechanic can work on an asset, I mean, in an aftermarket shop, hey, what's the status of this truck? Oh, waiting on an approval for this. Okay, well then we'll wait for a few more days or whatever. It sucks out efficiency. When you start having things collaborative, you build in so much more efficiency and so much more value in terms of productivity and everything else.
Well, I look forward to looking back on this in 5 years with you, and we'll have a beer and see what happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, let's close out this conversation. If there's one thing you want the listeners to take away from today's conversation, what we say last is often what is remembered. What's that one thing?
Everything's going to be okay. Things are really strange right now. Things are really, really stressful. Things are really chaotic, but there are brilliant, hardworking people who understand the problems that we have in the industry and overall, and they are going to continue to drive that innovation. If people don't want things to get better or to progress or to become more efficient, they're not going to win. So the main thing I'd say is things are going to be okay. There's a lot more stress coming, but for now, it is going to be okay. We are all going to be okay. That's the main takeaway that I would have.
You've been watching HDPR Live, and I'm your host, Jamie Irvine. Today, we've been speaking with Matt from Decisiv. To learn more, go to decisiv.com. Links are in the notes wherever you're watching this. If you're watching this live right now on Facebook, it is in the notes. If you watch the rebroadcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, you will have it there as well. Matt, thanks for being on HDPR Live today.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Great to see you again.
And I want to thank everyone who's tuning in live. Thanks for watching this episode, and go over to jamieirvine.ca. Again, links are there. Hit that subscribe button so that you know when one of these lives is going on. And also, if you want to subscribe to our weekly email, that's where I summarize all the content we're putting out. Heavy Duty Parts Report, HDPR Live. You'll see it all there. So thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.
You can watch our next video, and don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel.